I wanna talk about NVIDIA real fast. Again, I think that NVIDIA, again, is bouncing off horizontal support and the rising trend line right here with the shadow. Again, we broke the trend line right here. And again, we could be in backtest mode. We could just straddle along this trend line or even jump above it and jump back below it. Just kind of straddle along it and end up forming a head and shoulders pattern. If we do, we could see S&P continue towards the upper boundary, and then we'll be watching NASDAQ. Does it make a new all-time high or not? But you could get a right shoulder. The peak over here is at 144.42. That was a high right here. And again, I think it's very possible you could see a lower high set up and then come back and break this trend line. But we are bouncing here, and that's surrounding our 50 period. We got a doji. I talked about this on Thursday that, again, pardon me, not on Thursday, on Thanksgiving, on Wednesday, that we very well could see NVIDIA get a rebound off of this trend line. And again, it's where horizontal support and the rising trend line intersect, and we're bouncing there. NVIDIA on Friday on a short abbreviated session of 2.42%, nearly 2.5%. But again, we've had these divergences play out. I talked about the trend line being reached here ahead of earnings. We went up, we hit it, and we reversed. We got a topping tail there. And again, it's a confirmed reversal in that we got a confirmation and follow through. But now we need to do more technical damage by taking out horizontal support in this trend line and dropping below the 50 period and staying below. The 10 did cross below the 20. If we can get a bigger rebound, or again, just kind of come up here and just kind of form this right shoulder, and again, the market could move higher. Even NASDAQ could still move to the upper boundary of the rising wedge. But I do think you got a shot at this head and shoulders, really nice looking head and shoulders here on NVIDIA. So I'll be watching that. These divergences played out, gave us a 14% drop from the top. We had a rally there. We had that volatility surrounding earnings, and then we had a rally, but the rally was sold. And again, investors disappointed. They beat earnings. Investors were hopeful of even a better performance. So here we are. Again, I think that, again, with this topping tail right here, we're turning off a major trend line in the weekly and the monthly time frame, as I've talked about. Could be a huge warning sign of a top. Now over here, NVIDIA peaked in June, and it sold off, it rose back up, and it got a lower high. NASDAQ made a higher high. They diverged. It was a July 10th peak. Here we could see something similar. It sold off 14%. Could rebound back up and get a lower high, and it could diverge with NASDAQ again. That's certainly possible. I'll be watching, does the RSI go back above 50? What happens here? And does the MACD firm up? Or do we start breaking the 50, breaking the horizontal support, and breaking this trend line? But you're bouncing off key support right here with our doji there on Wednesday, and then a rebound on Friday after the market was closed on Thursday. So I think we're going towards that 144 area in all likelihood. And again, possible head and shoulders. The reversal right here, as I've talked about, the upper boundary of our rising wedge, these peaks over here, beautiful, beautiful trend line. Look at that. I mean, it's just outstanding, beautiful textbook example of a rising wedge. Now, we may get an immediate back test right here and stall and not get the right shoulder and break down. That could happen as well. So don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying you've got a really pretty good shot that, we might end up evolving into this pattern here over time. But this rising trend line right here, we went up and we slammed up into the trend line in the longer term weekly time frame. Well, we got two trend lines I'm watching, the one up here and then a channel line weekly, and then I'm also watching these trend lines here, the black one and the blue ones down here. But the peak that we reached in weekly time frame, the trend line, the longer term trend line, we slammed into it over here at the June high, and now we've come up and slammed into it again because the further right to the chart you go, that trend line goes higher. Let me show you that trend line, but keeping this in mind that we hit it over here, and now we've hit it again right here again, and that was when all the selling took place. The CEO was selling, and we had that nosedive, and that dragged the market down during July on into August there. So again, keeping this topping tail, this black candlestick, and this peak in your mind, keeping that upper boundary in your mind, keep in mind some other things here. First of all, the diversions right here in the weekly time frame, that gave us this sell-off here in, again, June, July, and August for NVIDIA. We rebounded back up towards the peak of these highs over here, and again, now forming triple negative diversions. A diversion called this peak, now a triple diversions here on the RSI, and this MACD here has this negative diversions as well. Now, we are down about 2.5% for the week, but if we turn off of the trend line in the longer term weekly chart, and this channel is in my longer term chart, but only it looks much smaller because I'm looking at all of the data we have on NVIDIA. If we break the 20 week and we break this trend line, it will likely terminate the bull market for NVIDIA and for the stock market as well, because it will confirm a break of this trend line will confirm the reversal off the longer term trend line. So keep this channel in your mind, and the topping tail we had here, which is that similar to that topping tail, the same bar, same week. This is the weekly chart. You get one bar. They both went up to that upper boundary, the rising wedge, but this the sell-off we got with that topping tail on the daily that gave us this topping tail here on the weekly. So keep this trend line in the 20-week right there at that same level in mind with these bearish divergences in the weekly time frame, which could be very, very problematic for the market going forward. Be spelling that trouble is right around the corner. The same divergences are forming, with P and the NASDAQ and the Dow and so forth. Russell. So this channel is in this larger channel. Now, this is the channel we just looked at right here. And again, if we break this channel, it will confirm a reversal off of this level, start dropping back below the 20-week, and not be able to get back above that blue line, the 20-week moving average that we just looked at. So again, this could confirm a reversal in the market. And again, I talked about this before the earnings came out, that we could reverse off of this trend line. This is where we reversed off of the June, at the June peak right here, right at this trend line. So you've got this smaller channel and this larger channel on NVIDIA. So again, I'm watching this trend line because, again, bounce on NVIDIA in the daily, we can get a right shoulder, we could set up a lower high, but then if the right head and shoulders begins to break down, we could come back and break this channel in the weekly time frame and confirm a reversal off of this longer term channel. So again, something worth paying attention to. NVIDIA, when it begins to reverse, it will likely terminate the bull market. NASDAQ follows NVIDIA, and again, the market really follows the NASDAQ, the tech sector. So again, just something I'm going to be watching here, the channel here and the larger channel, to see if we get a confirmed reversal by breaking this trend line. But I think we're probably going to rally back up. I think that's going to take the S&P to a new high. We'll see if NASDAQ can do it. Sometimes they diverge, but NASDAQ very well may go to the upper boundary and diverge with NVIDIA. We'll see how it plays out. And NASDAQ just may get a new high along with the S&P. We'll see. Again, I'm talking about NVIDIA because this is really important. NVIDIA, if it starts to sink, it's going to tank the semiconductors. It's going to tank tech. It's going to tank the NASDAQ, and it has the ability to terminate the bull market. NVIDIA got a blow off top here, could be done. The S&P and NASDAQ, again, getting a blow off top. Again, I expect they're going to finish, and we very well could see that. It did not finish for the S&P. In November, we closed at new all-time highs right at the trend line in the monthly time frame. Again, we could even overthrow it and go into the high 6,000 area or on into the 6,100 range. The upper boundary of the rising wedge on the daily reaching the upper boundary of the trend line on the weekly. But wanted to review NVIDIA. And just remember, while we have this rising wedge and the dark black trend line broke down, we're still bouncing off the dotted one and the horizontal support here. Could be forming a head and shoulders pattern. Still have this larger potential double top pattern where we've just overthrown this peak a little bit. And again, drop back down, back below that June peak. So you got a possible double top, or it could be a head and shoulders too. If we get a dramatic drop, you got a left shoulder here, the head formation, and then again, possible rebound back up and an overall large topping process, which again, too early to tell, but just some things I'm paying attention to. We got the rising wedge, but a possible larger double top pattern for NVIDIA. So do keep that in mind at major resistance, mind you, here in the daily time frame, in the weekly time frame, off a long-term trend line I've been talking about. Now, if we look at NVIDIA's monthly chart too, another interesting thing is we got a topping tail for the month. We just closed out the month of November, and we rallied and peaked surrounding the earnings in that upper boundary of the rising wedge, and then we turned down and sold off. We sold off 14% and then rebound a little bit back up. So again, that's given us this topping tail, the shooting star in the monthly time frame. We had one over here, and we're seeing some topping tails in some distribution up here as we went down and we sold off from the June peak and then rose back up to the November high. And again, that's forming a divergence up here in the monthly time frame here on NVIDIA in the monthly time frame. So again, I'll be watching to see if we get confirmation of this bar and get a follow through, but just some important things. And we're getting this topping tail at the longer term trend line there in the weekly, and we could even switch it to the monthly, and you're getting this topping tail there in that longer term channel. And on the upper boundary in the daily time frame, you also got a topping tail there surrounding earnings. Huge red flags here with NVIDIA. I think is in a topping process right now that's now starting a reversal. It is that's really problematic for the stock market. This is a stock that has been leading the charge higher. NVIDIA monthly chart here. Nasdaq closed out the month strong. Not getting a shooting star candlestick. We didn't close at the highs of the month. P closed near the highs of the month. Again, huge red flag there with NVIDIA, a topping tail at major resistance levels. And again, we've talked about the S&P being right below the resistance levels, monthly and the weekly time frame. Now we're at that monthly trend line. I've talked about a similar situation for NASDAQ, although just a fraction under that weekly trend line and directly below the monthly. Here is a NASDAQ monthly close, and again, almost up 5.25%. Topping tail last month, but no confirmation, no follow through. And I told you again, right ahead of the election, that the signals were warning we were going to get a rally. 60-minute charts and daily charts at key horizontal support were correct again. Minute charts have really been nailing the turns with the short-term price fluctuations. Here is NASDAQ monthly chart. And NASDAQ in the monthly time frame just still below that longer-term channel line. Still may go up and reach that level. NVIDIA can't make new highs. It might diverge with it, but it might be that the NASDAQ, it's close but no cigar here. A trend line just under a trend line directly in the weekly time frame. This trend line still above our high for November. Again, I'm still watching to see if we attempt to reach it. NASDAQ's trying to bounce off this trend line of support. S&P didn't quite make it to the rising trend line. NASDAQ did. And again, we'd rally off the 50 here ahead of the election. 60-minute charts warned of that. That was correct. Here's the presidential election results in the Fed. We're going to peak over here. We came right up into this upper trend line. Why? Because the 60-minute charts said we were very, very overbought. You to be watching the gaps. S&P never did reach that target level, so I told you I still thought, though again the signals correctly predicted the sell-off, I still thought we would try to rally higher. Now again, NASDAQ may diverge with S&P, but it could be NASDAQ's on its way back up to this upper boundary right here as well. So we could see a divergence form on some indicators like here with momentum. If this trend line begins to break immediately, or we rally back up and we get a lower high and then it breaks, that's going to be bearish. If we rally up and we buy a little bit more time, if NVIDIA forms a right shoulder, we could see the NASDAQ move up to this upper boundary and then begin to turn or even try to overthrow it. But if you do move up to this upper boundary, you're going to be moving closer towards that upper boundary in the monthly time frame. So just something worth paying attention to. Now, this peak right here, we came to just a fraction under the trend line in the weekly time frame. We still may overthrow that if we try to go up to this upper boundary and towards the upper boundary in the monthly time frame on NASDAQ. NASDAQ has this channel from the pandemic low to the 2021 top and the October 2022 low. And again, we're now reaching this level. We came to just slightly under it. It's parallel to the lows over here. And again, we may overthrow this level. I talked about how we overthrew this trend line right here just a little bit. And this one I had pointed out as we did that, we got a 9-count sell signal in July. And again, trend line I had a little bit tighter earlier, and here slightly excluded some shadows. Nice, perfectly parallel trend line. So again, I'll be watching to see if we reach it or do we get a lower high. But you've got your diversions forming here. You've got your diversions forming on the MACD and a lot of indicators all over the place. So going to be watching that. We bounced out this trend line right here in the weekly time frame. And again, if we go a little bit higher than this level, you can hit the monthly trend line or that upper boundary of the rising wedge. If we overthrow this area just a bit, still may end up getting a lower high. So we'll be watching to see how it unfolds. Remember over here when we were topping process, NASDAQ ended up making a lower high. The S&P moved to a higher high in January, and they diverged. They also diverged here in July. Diverged quite a bit. Just another channel that I'm watching here on the NASDAQ. For the week, NASDAQ was up 0.74%, up 154 points. Again, lighter volume in a short trading week. Now, if I bring up the RSI and the MACD, you can see, again, we might form a divergence here. We might confirm a lower high, but we're trying to bounce off this trend line down here